Hello, everyone. Welcome for our Ask Fred session today. I have the amazing Fred Cary. Hello, Fred.
Hey, how are you? How's everybody?
I think they can give us a thumbs up if you guys are good out in the audience. And Fred is the CEO of IdeaPros, and we like to pick his brain regularly to find out what answers he has for entrepreneurial questions, giving us direction on what kinds of things are going on in the economy around us. So today we have lots of great questions. But if you do have a question for Fred today, feel free to put it in the chat. And as we finish up the first set that was submitted, we'll go to the chat to ask questions of Fred as well. So,
Hey,
Fred,
everybody.
you look very chipper today. I'm excited. I don't know. You look like you're ready to answer all these.
I am, and I'm going to turn my sound off on my phone so I don't get interrupted, as usual, nonstop days. But I promised myself that tomorrow I'm going to take one day off. So I'm so
Oh,
excited. So
wow. All right.
nobody reach out to me on Saturday unless it's come and have a barbecue.
That's nice. Well, perfect. I hope you do something fun. We have some great questions though, and one of them, well, actually we have two that are around financial matters. And so I'm going to kind of blend those together, tell you both of them because I think they might kind of work together in the explanation. So, can you talk in general terms about really the purpose of a 5013C 506C capital raise, Fred?
Okay. You said you had two things
Oh,
you were.
yes, that's one. And then the other is your thoughts on the demise of the Silicon Valley Bank and what it does for entrepreneurs.
Okay. All right. First of all, this is not a financial show. I'm not giving anybody any financial advice, telling them what to do with their money. I'm giving you my general opinions on how I see both of those things. First of all, the question of a 506c is pretty apropos because IdeaPros is just getting ready to start one ourselves, and I can't talk to anybody about ours because that would be an open solicitation, and you have to do things a certain way when you're doing a 506c. But I think I might even broaden that conversation a little bit because there's several different ways that entrepreneurs can raise capital, and through a 506c is one of the ways. So I'm going to start with that one. So that is a regulation, right? It's regulation 506c, which is part of the investment regulations and what's required to raise capital and do so lawfully. So a 506c is basically a private placement to people who are called accredited investors. And and we're doing one that I think we're doing the initial paperwork on Monday. That probably takes a couple of weeks, and then we're going to go start our 506c. And how that works is basically you are offering money. You're not offering money. You're offering to take money in exchange for shares of your company, and you can only do it with two things. One's called a PPM, which is a private placement memorandum that dictates all of the requirements of the offering and talks about the company and past revenue, future revenue expectations, has all sorts of disclosures. And it can only go out to people that are called accredited investors. And an accredited investor on the individual side is somebody that has at least $1 million worth of net worth, or somebody who's made at least $200,000 a year for the last 2 years and is expecting to do so in the coming year. And for a couple, I think it's 300,000. Don't rely on me for any of that, but that's generally what it is. And then there's all sorts of other things that can qualify you as an accredited investor. If you're a trust, if you're a bank, if you're a small investment group, all those things will qualify you as an accredited investor. And so with a 506c, you typically hire a company to go out for you to offer that private placement memorandum to these sophisticated investors, and you'll do a presentation to them, much like what I'm doing with you guys, but there'll be a pitch deck. There'll be a lot of financial data. What's important if you're considering a 506c is you better have your finances down, because every single element of what you're presenting is really around the financial model and what you're expected to get out of the financial model. Okay, that's 506c. You can also do small offerings that are close family friends, that are kind of a lot looser with the rules, because you're just starting a company. You're getting several unaccredited investors together, going out and raising $500,000, and those there are different regulations for those. There's also a Reg A, which is a combination of accredited and non-accredited investors. You can raise up to $75 million with that. And there's a Reg CF, which is a really good one for people who are just starting out and doing some of their first rounds. Maybe they've had a seed round already for a few $100,000. With Reg CF, it's crowdfunding, and you can raise up to I think it's about $1.2 million without 2 years worth of audited financials, and you can raise up to $5 million if you have 2 years of audited financial. And that can be a lot of unaccredited investors, and those investment amounts are typically $500 to $1,000 at a time, and it's been pretty successful for a lot of companies. Other companies haven't succeeded in doing so. The ones that do succeed, number one, have a good product. They have very attentive management. They go through a lot of time, energy, and effort in handling all the things that are coming in. Because if you can imagine, if you're trying to raise a couple of $1 million through the CF financing, you're going to probably have thousands of investors. So you have to answer a lot of questions all the time. You have to give up. You have to give updates just like you would a with a product crowdfunding offering. And so it's a lot of work. But if you do the work and you deal with a company like Start Engine, for example, or WeFunder, that we happen to have good relationships with at the CEO level, then that's a good way to try to raise capital as well. So that's the first part of it. Um,
That was a really great answer. So
wow.
I know there was a lot of information in there.
But again, I'm not your financial advisor. You have to be really careful when you're going out and making an offering, and make sure you comply with all the rules. Make sure we have, for example, we're even doing a small little internal round for our partners to have some of our partners be actual owners of IdeaPros, since we're already partners. And even that's just a small round we're doing before we do our 506c. And even that one, there's subscription documents, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of disclosures. You'll see in any financing that you do, there'll be all these block letters that talk about how investing in stock in general is risky, and all these things. And those are the regulations that the government requires anybody to put in. So you don't have people saying to you, hey, put in $5,000 and I'm going to make you $50 million guaranteed. People can't do that, and therefore you got to have all these types of disclosures. The second half of your question, I think, dealt with Silicon Valley Bank
Yes.
and what effect that will have on startups. So that's a kind of convoluted answer as well. I'll give you my personal opinion on Silicon Valley Bank. First, Silicon Valley Bank is a bank that took riskier loans did riskier loans compared to other banks, in that they worked very closely with the venture capital community, and they would give loans out to companies that are just starting out, that don't have a lot of assets behind them. And so, by the very nature, more traditional banks that wouldn't lend money to those types of entities would always go to Silicon Valley Bank. And because of the relationship with the venture capital community, they would do riskier loans. On top of that, they also gave more money. Like if you're a venture capital firm and you had money in Silicon Valley Bank, they were paying you higher interest rates for that money than a traditional bank would do, again, because of that type of relationship. And finally, the investment choices that they were making, they were really leveraging themselves heavily. And again, this is all my opinion. I could be completely wrong, but this is my opinion that the investments that they were making with other people's money um, were very, very conservative investments. So they were taking a lot of risk on the outside, but then taking the capital they had in and making investments that were not risky, but that were making really little returns. And so being so highly leveraged and then having an economy where inflation is going up and venture capital is drying up a little bit, there's starting to be a call for money. People want to take money out because they need it to grow their business because they can't go to the other more traditional sources of financing that cause the run on the bank, much like one of my favorite little Christmas movies. And so Silicon Valley Bank couldn't keep up with that. That's my thought about why they went down. There was a ripple effect on that, and some other regional banks and even bigger banks had their stock plunged 70%, 80%. But the federal government stepped in and basically said they're going to cover most of the investments that people have in Silicon Valley Bank. Typically, you're limited to $250,000 being covered, and the FDIC says I think they're going to cover over 90% of what people put in there. So, what effect does that have on people who are out trying to raise capital? Number one, if you're just starting out as an entrepreneur and you're not associated with a big venture capital firm, Silicon Valley Bank wouldn't give you money anyway. So it's not going to affect it that way. There's a combination of things that are against you, but are for you, and I'll explain that. Number one, you have the increased interest rates, right, which slows down buying intentionally. The government raises the interest rates so you don't buy as much stuff. If you look at a house that was $1 million at a 3% interest rate, you had a $3,000 payment to buy that house. That was pretty cool. All of a sudden, when interest rates go from 3% to 6%, now you're paying $6,000 a month instead of $3,000 a month. So the government's trying to slow down how much money goes out there in the street. When that happens, then it's harder for other institutions to borrow money because they have to pay more money to get money. And that starts drying up the venture community. And you see the stock market going down, you see venture capital drying up. But the good news in things like that is now you have private capital looking at longer term horizons. So you can see that some of the most famous companies in the world out there all started in really bad economic times. Airbnb, Google, even way back to General Electric. They started in bad economic times. And they did so because the first money that goes in when the playable money is getting tight is the folks that are betting on a longer horizon. Like if somebody goes in on a 506c, like what we're doing, that's a private investor that says, you know what, I don't trust my money in the stock market right now because it's too volatile. And so I don't want to put my money in there, but I have some amount of capital that I can put into private investments because I'm looking there at a 3 year, a 5 year window of horizon of growth. And that gives that company that has a private money not to be battered by the stock market fluctuations because they're private, they're in their own little shell, they're growing their business. And I think this is a really great business. I'm going to invest in it and I'm going to allow this company to grow. And then when market conditions are right, then that company can go public. And my investment in that private entity, for me as an investor, and again, this is a hypothetical case, for me as an investor is a lot more secure because I don't have to worry about the stock market going up and down. I just have to worry about the company I'm investing in having good management, having a good plan, performing, executing on what they do, and living up to the projections that they told me they were going to have. So uh, hopefully I answered all those things. So bottom line, 506c is probably not something that you're going to get just coming out of the gate because you're dealing with accredited investors. They're going to want to see some really deep dive into your financials. And as a startup, you probably don't have them. So you probably have to resort to friends and family and a couple of close family offices that have a little bit more capital, that know you, that want to work with you. And the things like the Silicon Valley Bank are probably not going to have very much effect on a startup either, except everybody's a little jittery, but that passes fast because the reality is in this market, there is too much money. There are too many entities that are charged with making money for the people that have given them money, and they have to place that money somewhere. So there's too much money and not enough good stuff out there to put the money into. So investors, sophisticated investors, corporate investors, are looking for places to put their capital. It just has to be a really good deal. You have to really have thought it out, and you have to get the advice. Like, for example, I'm working with Oren Claff, who is the number one expert on pitching, and we're making sure every single slide that we have in our deck can point to a financial assumption that we have thought out, thought through, and can back up. And if you don't have that type of sophistication yet in your company, and you're just starting out, then none of those things really are going to affect you very much, because there's going to be friends and families and SBA and second mortgages and sell that sailboat like I did when I was 26, things like that, that are going to get you your initial capital.
I love it. You covered so much. Thank you. I know, and Odin over there, he's in Canada, and he was just mentioning in the chats that there's a lot different rules, and they even actually have province, independent things. So I know we have quite a few partners that watch from Canada as well, and they only insure up to 100K. Oh, that's interesting. But Fred, thank you for covering that question so deeply. We got both of them in that same one.
Yeah,
So we do.
again, this is not financial advice. This is Fred's personal opinion on
But
any
I
of it.
learned a lot going through that. So I had no idea on the deeper dive information. So thank you. Now we have a question from Scott, and he says, when you get close to launching your product and you have to buy parts, either for overseas or somewhere else, how many should you start with?
Well, as few as they'll allow you
I
to.
was going to say, if he doesn't say it, I'm going to say it. That's why I'm still on the screen.
Oh, and you say parts, so I'm assuming you're going to have parts supplied in China and then fully manufactured either here in the U.S. or some other area. So you can say made in the U.S. or assembled in the U.S. at the very
I
least.
think so, yes.
Yeah,
Some parts of it are coming from China.
right. So it depends on your capital, right? If you're really, really well funded, you get a break when you buy more. But if you're not really well funded, you have to beg, borrow, and steal to be able to get the minimum order quantities. And there's two areas where you can really screw up. And the first one is putting too much money out there in your parts and things that when you're really tight, because number one, you don't know what your sales are going to be, how quickly they're going to take off, and you may end up with a garage full of parts that are sitting there for a while, and you don't have the capital that you need for advertising and marketing and operations and the other things that are important in running a business. So if you're very, very well capitalized and you're worried about supply and demand issues, then buy as many as you can reasonably afford. If you're bootstrapping and you're really tight on capital, then you need to find a manufacturer that, number one, will work with you on limited supplies at first with your promise and your plan to show them how, hey, look, I need 1,000 of these now. I know your minimum is 10,000. Work with me on 1,000. I'll pay you extra for those. And then my next order should be 10,000, then 50,000, then 100,000. So manufacturers want business, and they will work with you to some extent. You have to understand something about the manufacturing process. There's a setup that takes place. So when you see that there's minimum runs that a manufacturer has to have, it's simply because of the fact that they're running several different types of products through the same machinery through the same assembly system, and they have to reset that machinery for different types of parts and different type companies that are taking parts from them. So every time there's a setup, everything goes down, everything gets reset, and they need to have a certain number of those things go through to be profitable just because of the effort that's involved. So work very carefully with your manufacturer. Make sure it's a manufacturer you trust, not somebody you just found out of Alibaba, and then go, in most cases, try to get the lowest volume you can get. There are two main areas where we really screw up as entrepreneurs. And one is when things don't happen fast enough. That we're assuming that we're going to get all these things in, we're going to assemble them, we're going to go on Amazon, or we're going to have our own site, or we're going to, God forbid, knock on the doors of Walmart and Target and try to get our product. Um, and I say God forbid for another, I'll say why that for another show, but then it doesn't start selling. And now you got all this money invested in this stuff. You don't have any money left for marketing, and you can end up going out of business with a garage full of stuff. The other problem that is probably one of the second causes of failure in that sense is things grow too well, and you can't manage with the cash flow that you have. You cannot manage the ordering that you need to order. So, for example, Marian, I'll go a little bit more into Target just for an example. You go in, you have this beautiful golden widget, you think it's going to be amazing. You have your supplier that sent you, your manufacturer made your first 1,000 products. You go into Walmart and they say, I love it, I want 100,000 of those. They're not going to pay you in advance. In fact, they may pay you 60 or 90 days after they get the product. So now you have this massive order and no capital to go ahead and manufacture. So you have to go to the bank. You're going to have to show the purchase orders. You're going to have to go to purchase order companies that will lend you money against those purchase orders, and you're going to have to pay for that. And then you have to wait for how long things take to get manufactured, get delivered, and then the worst part is Walmart can call you 60 days in. Hey, we have out of the 468 stores we put things in, your product's performing in 100 stores, and you're not hitting our minimums for the rest. You need to take all these products. So you, when you're looking at that one individual part of things, how many parts do I need? You need to consider the whole picture, right? You can't consider a tactic without considering your whole strategy. So part of your question, how many parts do I need, is where am I going to sell this? What are my expectations? How much am I going to need to have set aside for my advertising and marketing budget? How am I going to work with the channels that I need to work with? How many employees, if any, do I need to start out with? And do I have enough capital to do all these things? And if things go slower than I hope they go, am I going to be able to survive in the short term so I can make it in the longer term? So complicated question, but the short answer, or kind of easy question, complicated answer, but the short version of that answer is don't order more than you really can afford, considering all the other obligations that you're going to have.
Perfect. Well, that was really good. Well, I have one last question, Fred, and then I'm going to go over to the chat. I know we're really close to finishing up for today. Anyway, if you do have a question that you want to have answered and we don't make it on this one, we will put it in the list for next time. It's in the post too. You can go to the form to fill out for questions. But the last question, because we focused a lot about products, and now I think we need to give the apps a little bit of love. And so the question is, how do you get, what's the best way to build users in an app, and specifically one that's a two-sided app? So you have, you have like businesses and you have consumers, let's say, but how do you go about building your users up? Best way to build up users in an app?
All right, that's a pretty general question, but I'm going to try to give some specific answers anyway. First of all, any app that's two-sided, you really want to start in one area first to prove it out, to get your model working, to do what you think it's going to do, right? It's easier to focus on one area, pick one metro area and start there. Merchants or whoever the professional is that's in a two-sided app is more likely to be willing to go in there and hibernate than a consumer. A consumer, you want to have the consumer come in and have an experience that, wow, this is pretty cool. And you can't do that if you try to build both of those up at the same time. So the way that I like to do it, and I'll give you some example that's kind of way different than this, but it's the same sort of principle. The way that I like to do it with something like that is go to the merchants. Look, we are launching in Los Angeles. We're going to be launching in 180 days, or we're going to launch in 90 days, or we're going to launch in a year. It doesn't matter. I want to set up a page for you. I want you to be kind of one of the unique representatives of the town that we're going in. It's completely free. I need to load up that side of the app before I go live so that when I start bringing customers in, we're going to have a mall full of stores and opportunities for them. Again, it's going to be free. Don't expect anything other than you're one of the few that are chosen at this point. We're going to set you all up, coordinate with you. I'm going to be giving you updates on a weekly basis from now until we're ready to launch, let you know how many different merchants we have in, how we're growing. We'll talk more about our strategy on bringing customers in, and you can start thinking about the type of specials and offers that you're going to make for these customers when I do open those doors. And we'll give you a 30-day countdown when we're ready to go live. So a merchant's fine with that because number one, you're not asking them really for any money. Number two, it's going to give them another source of revenue. Number three, they understand the whole concept of you got to build a store before you bring in the customers, right? And in your business, you're building a virtual store. So when Tessa said, well, we talked enough about products, to me, an app is a product as well because the app is just the way that you're selling your product or your service, right?
True.
So they're all products. And so just think about it as a store. You don't want to open up your mall, have thousands of customers go in the mall and there's no stores. The stores are all closed. And so even with a legitimate, real live mall, brick and mortar, they fill it up with merchants first and then they have a grand opening. So that's what I would do. And you can do it in a really exclusive way. And you can start getting customers earlier than you're ready to open as well. We have one app, for example, it's called Plus You. And Plus You is this kind of high roller app that is basically events based. You'll be able to get VIP tickets to the Super Bowl or some big concerts, and just everybody can become a VIP if they're part of this app. And because we're not really ready to launch yet, the methodology that we're using, and we're really close, the methodology that we're using is not, hey, give us your email address and we'll let you know when we're ready to launch. That's pretty lame, right? Ours is like, do you think you have what it takes to be a VIP? If you do, we want you to put in your name, your email address, your phone number, and your Instagram handle so we can go check you out. And we're going to make decisions on who we're going to allow in of our first group of members that are going to be part of this app. And so now you're building anticipation while you're building your app. Now you're creating exclusivity with something that's not quite ready yet instead of, hey, we'll let you know when we're ready to go live. That's not very exciting. So there's multiple ways to do it. You just got to think about making it exciting and trying to get people into something that they're going to believe is going to have solid value for them at some near future point.
And I think they did that with Clubhouse. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the app, but you could not get into Clubhouse, which is an app on your phone, it's just audio environment. But you had to be invited, and you only had so many, like 3 invitations you could give out to other people. So when you got someone who was willing to invite you and then teach you how to use it, you took it because you're like, oh, I don't know. I have been waiting and on this waiting list for a really long time. I know with Superhuman, which is an app for helping you organize your email, again, invitation based. You got notifications just basically saying, we're getting through our initial group. You're on our list, but we'll let you know when it's open. And then when they did open it, you had to pay up front without even seeing the software. I was like, I've been waiting forever for this thing. I've saw very few little walkthroughs, but it's that exclusivity is really effective for some things. But they did have a lot of advertising. So I will say, when you're building users, you are going to have a good amount of advertising dollars, even if that is, to go out it's somebody's time to go find these influencers. Just be ready to put some marketing behind that. That doesn't just naturally happen. They don't, if you build it, they will come. That's not real
And,
accurate.
and by the way, that's one reason I say start in one city, because that's
Mm-hmm.
easier to manage. You can even get on your local morning TV shows for free, because they want to talk about this new local person starting this really cool thing only in our city. So there are ways to guerrilla your way through these things when you're working on a limited budget. And so, again, there's always a way to do this. There's companies that have launched with very little money, and there's other companies that launch with a ton. And Chief.com, I asked you to join that company,
Yes.
right? That's a membership only company for C-suite women. And 8 months ago, they raised $100 million at a $1.1 billion valuation. Basically, it's a club for women to talk about how to get further along in their careers. Um,
And
a
I was on the outside of that for a while. It took a long time to get my invite email on that.
Right, right. They created this list, this anticipation. And it's not cheap. It's like $5,800 a year or something like that. So they create this anticipation. And mind you, a year and a half ago, they were only in 7 states. So they just went national after they got their $100 million in funding, and now I think they're even going international. But it's a process. They started in one state, they built up to 7 states, they started getting more investment dollars. Because once you prove out your theory, and that theory now becomes something that's actionable and measurable, and that you can throw into a spreadsheet and say, okay, they got into this one city, this was the uptake, this is how many merchants signed up out of the total merchants that were asked to sign up, this is the rate of growth that they're showing in this city, and this is the rate of drop off of customers. Now we can take that model and expand it out. And so somebody who's an investor can look at that and say, all right, this makes sense. I can see how we get from this one state to 14 states here within a year. And when you get that underlying data, then you can go out and get more money.
Beautiful. Well, I know we have Sage Scheduler here, and that's one of the apps that's going to have to go use this method too to get theirs. So thanks for putting that on there. SageScheduler.com is one of our app partners. And Fred, I think I've gotten all the questions out of you that I can for today. So I'm going to let you go, and I'll just respond to some of the chats in here. If you want to leave us with a final thought, though.
I do want to say that whoever asked you that question about, you talked to me about it a little bit just before we went on, and maybe she should reach out to me because there may be an opportunity for her to leapfrog, and I'll show her how to go raise some capital because there may be another opportunity for her in this particular instance. Maybe we can talk on Monday or Tuesday, okay? But final words?
Oh, and happy St. Patty's Day. I just had to say that. Okay, final words.
When is Patty's Day?
What did you say?
When is it? Today?
It's today. Happy St. Patty's Day. We're not wearing green. I just found out just a little bit before I went live. Plus, we have plenty of people saying it in the chat.
Oh,
I'm
it's on,
lucky I know what day of the week it is, let alone day of
it's on my list of lame holidays. Like Cinco de Mayo is not celebrated in Mexico, except for in border towns. But My final thoughts are that this stuff's really hard. And I've said this 1,000 times. Um, Being an entrepreneur is almost like willing to be insane because things never go right. Things take way too long. Even in our business, where we have almost 400 partners. Fact of the matter is, and we'll be doing a press release. In the last 6 months, we've launched dozens of companies, dozens, and yet there are people that are like complaining about them not being launched, or their version one of an app doesn't look like everything that they expected. Um, get your stuff and get out into the marketplace and start trying to run your business. Everybody, when they start, has problems, and everybody takes a long time to get started. I've talked about Airbnb ad nauseum, but everybody wants to be Airbnb. But when they started, they had 3 air mattresses in a one-bedroom apartment that they rented out for $80 a night. That's where they started. Start somewhere. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for perfection, you want that last color change, or your icon is a little small, or you don't like the way your logo kind of fits together, forget about it. Go live. Start proving your business, and when you start proving your business, then it doesn't really matter. I mean, how many of you spend time when you go on Instagram or anywhere else, like looking at the colors, looking at the print, on what type of font they use? Don't waste all your time on that stuff. Nobody gives about that shit. Go out, make a really good experience for people. And the sooner you do that, the sooner you can start building your company and having your dreams become a reality.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Fred, as always. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. And I just want to say hi to y'all over here in the chat. I know we've had tons of comments, and I'm so glad to see some new people that have hopped in. And actually, Levi, I know you've been here a couple times, but it's good to see you back. And you mentioned that you were hoping for an accountant or tax pro for our next partner meeting. I'm actually working with some speakers that might be a great fit, not only for our Insider Circle, but also for these Friday Lives. I also have a crowdfunding specialist that I met that I'm going to bring in and have her present for you guys as well, and speaking coaches for how to perform and have confidence, all kinds of things coming down the pipeline for you guys. But available renovation services, haven't seen you here before, welcome. And Quentin, so get Zwizzy right now. You can go check out the website. They have product they are going to be selling, and I'm going to put it in the chat, getzwizzy.com. Amazing that she's got her order coming in. We have Natural Product company that just is receiving her first set of orders. And Bill over there at, oh my gosh, can you put your link in the chat, Bill? It's been so long. I haven't seen you forever. Good to have you. And Amal, nice to meet you. You're outside of the US. It depends. We can work with people internationally, but most of our clients are in the US. And maybe Fred, I don't know if you are still in the back room, if you can explain a little bit about that. Yeah, so Amal asked if we do support outside of US. He's in India though.
Of course, of course. In fact, there's a few different people that I've supported in India. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm working with someone who's over in Tokyo right now, and so we're trying to coordinate schedules. She's overseas at the moment. Awesome. Okay.
You do know Tokyo is not in India, right?
No. But it's a 13-hour time difference.
That's a joke.
Time difference. Okay, I'm kicking you out again, Fred. Bye. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. No, we've got so many great people. Odin, thank you for all of the comments. Great to have you here. Oh, and so yes, High Rise Sports Chair. That's what it is. Oh my gosh. Good to have you back. I haven't seen you in forever. I know we have Tribe Apps. That is Michael P. Ryan over there. I don't know if you have your website link, but if you want to put it in, I'm happy to put that up on the screen because you have been working so hard at it. We just have so many people here, entrepreneurs, every single week. Our main mission is to help you to answer those entrepreneurial questions and get your business going, and really support you in every way that we can. We have free resources on our website, ideapros.com/blog. We also have a checklist that's new. I'm going to be announcing it officially next week. So you guys have to hang in for that. That's all about market validation and how to, well, I'm not going to tell you everything, but we have that coming down the pipeline too. So if you guys haven't hit the bell to get reminders when we go live, do that now so that you get notification. We go live on Facebook and YouTube. I'm hoping that Fred will eventually start doing the Instagram one with us too, because we have it through StreamYard now. But we will see you guys all next week. Have a blessed week. Bye.